Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined on this Friday morning, the start of November, by Pat Fitzmaurice and by Derek Brown. Fellas, we are into now the third month of the NFL season. We are into the second half of the season, kind of, that with it not being an even number of weeks, it kind of happens in the middle of this week. But we are, in the stretch run, really, of fantasy seasons. Remarkable stuff that it goes this fast. Feels like it goes faster every year. Debra, how was your Halloween?
It was good, man. I was telling Pat I had some misgivings or problems with eye makeup and stuff for my costume. Apparently, you can be allergic to that thing. Didn't know that until now. So I don't know whether to thank really crappy eye makeup or old age, but one of them is to blame here.
Yeah. Fitz, how about you? We talked a bit about some of your favorite candies and scary movies yesterday. How was your actual Halloween?
It was good. So my kids have aged out of the trick-or-treating phase, but it was funny. My wife was like swatting my son's hand, my hand, as we were going into this big candy bag. She was all worried we weren't going to have enough for the trick-or-treaters, and we never get a ton. So, of course, we still have more than half the bag left, and now I can have free reign over the Kit Kats and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and Snickers. So, yeah, it's all good.
I was going to say, Pat, do you not use the two-bowl approach? You take out one really fast, dump a little bit in there, hide it into the cupboard? No? Guess no? No? Okay.
Debra, I'm mad I didn't think of the Werther's original joke yesterday when we were talking about the favorite candies.
I didn't know if anybody heard that.
I did hear it in there, and I was mad I didn't think of it myself. Quickly, Debra, because we talked about yesterday with Erickson. What is your favorite candy and your favorite Halloween movie?
Oh, people hated this. People hated this out on social media. It's candy corn, baby. The 101. The 101 of Halloween candy. I will not be denied this. It is so awesome.
I feel like I'm the only person who doesn't have candy corn first or last. For me, it's just fine. It's a perfectly fine Halloween candy. I don't hate eating it.
That's a polarizing take, Worm. Got to mention it. Polarizing take.
And then what about your favorite Halloween movie?
Ooh. That's a really good one. I'm not that much of a scary movie buff, man, honestly.
Not either.
Yeah, I don't know. It has to be Hocus Pocus 101.
That's what Erickson said.
Yeah, it has to be Hocus Pocus. Nice. Definitely. That's definitely a banger. Although I will say, before we get rolling here, a lot of sequels really suck and miss the mark. That was a good one.
Hocus Pocus sequel?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've ever seen it. I probably haven't. I just don't remember it.
So good.
I'm not a big scary movie guy either.
Well, Worm, that one won't scare you.
Yeah, I know. That's a good point. I said Scream because that's kind of like a parody of scary movies. That was my my choice yesterday. All right, well, we're past Halloween. Like I said, we're past October. We're past the halfway point just about of the fantasy season. Like I mentioned, this is our Friday show. Quick reminder, all of our weekly consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. And if you're juggling multiple fantasy football teams and feeling overwhelmed, Fantasy Pros is here to help you simplify things. With Fantasy Pros Multi-League Assistant, you can see the latest news, notes, and rankings for every single player across all your teams. It's all in one spot, making your path to victory clearer and easier. Dive in and let us help you dominate all your leagues with the Multi-League Assistant at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app. All right, fellas, it's our Week 9 key questions here. We'll start off with Chargers-Browns because I want to start off talking about this Browns offense. Are we excited to start these Browns skilled players again this week, coming off of a largely pretty great Week 8 performance under, new quarterback Jameis Winston? Debra, I'll start with you.
I'm honestly not. The Bolts pass defense has been pretty tough. I've been throwing a little bit of cold water on Cedric Tillman. Said the big games, obviously we were big into him last week, but I'm throwing a little bit of cold water here. The Chargers secondary has been very good, allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points per game to perimeter wide receivers. They've been very good against tight ends, 7th lowest yards per reception. Honestly, and this might be odd, guys, the guy I'm most excited for in this game is actually Nick Chubb. The Chargers' run defense can be had. They're allowing the 11th highest yards to contact per attempt and the 12th highest yards per carry to zone runs. I think this is a really sneaky spot for Nick Chubb to get going. After last week, we saw his workload trickle up. I already bet the over for his rushing yards.
Yeah, Fitz, we talked a little bit about Nick Chubb yesterday, too, on the show with Erickson and how it was only 52 yards, I think, but he was the first running back to go over 50 yards in a game against Baltimore this season. Now Baltimore lost Michael Pierce during the game, Travis Jones banged up, but still nobody else has done it, and Nick Chubb did, and also like Devo mentioned, kind of getting that volume up again too. So I also like Nick Chubb a bit this week. What do you think about him? Especially, do you like him better than some of these pass catchers?
Yeah, I mean, his second game back, and we saw him get 16 carries, and we saw him play a snap share, I think, just under 60%. So he is almost back to full featured back status already, which, what an amazing comeback, considering, like, just thinking back to how bad that injury looked when, Minkah Fitzpatrick, through no fault of his own, just hit him when he was planted in such a horrible way. And that was truly a grotesque injury. Great to see one of the best pure runners in the NFL back. I am excited about this offense. Again, Worm. Like, the passing game has new life with Jameis. We're getting Chubb back, and the offensive line is getting healthier, which was a big problem earlier in the season. So Jameis Winston threw 41 passes last week in his first start for the Browns, and his average depth of target on his throws was 10 yards. And I mentioned this on our show yesterday, Worm, but I'll mention it again because it's such a great stat, courtesy of our buddy Jacob Gibbs over at CBS. Jameis had 275 catchable air yards last week, the previous single season high for any quarterback this year in catchable air yards. Brock Purdy with 213. Jameis just blew that number out of the water in his first start. And, that doesn't obviously include after the catch yards. So, like, that shows what his ceiling is. Everyone's being really conservative with him, doesn't like the matchup. I think last time I checked, his Jameis had an ECR of like QB 18. I've got him in the top 10. Like, he's going to do his thing. The one thing that could torpedo Jameis, of course, is if he throws like 4 interceptions, and that allows the Chargers to just hold the ball and take the air out of it, because I think they are currently averaging the most seconds between snaps of any team in the league. Like, the Chargers play at a glacial pace. So that's the danger here. But man, if Jameis doesn't turn it over a bunch, Cedric Tillman is blossoming. David Njoku is a must start. Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore are playable. This is going to be a fun offense.
Yeah, Debra, I wanted to ask you about the quarterback ranking, because this is another thing we talked about a bit on the Start Sit show with Erickson. Fitz and Erickson were pretty far apart in their ranking of Jameis for this week. Fitz already mentioned he's got Jameis in the top 10. Erickson had him down, I think, like QB 17, QB 18 range. Where do you have Jameis?
I'm with Erickson. I got him at QB 17. And like, I think the volume can be there for Jameis. There's just other quarterbacks that I like this week. Like, I know this doesn't sound like a hot take, but considering his production for the entire season, I've got Patrick Mahomes inside my top 12. I like Geno more. I like Bo Nix more. I think it's a good bounce back spot for Caleb. Jared Goff can throw it, although we're worried about the weather a little bit for that game. Dak Prescott, I think it's a big bounce back spot possibly for him. So it's not so much that I hate Jameis this week. I just like other scoring environments better than this one. Like, if you were to tell me this game walked away like as a 13 or a 16 to 9 type of game, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised.
Let's go to Cowboys-Falcons. I want to talk about Kyle Pitts, who is having, a resurgence here the last month. In the last 4 weeks, he has 7 catches for 88 yards, 3 catches for 70 yards, 7 catches for 65 yards, and 4 for 91 with 2 touchdowns in that most recent game. Is he a tier 1 tight end option this week and also moving forward, Fitz?
Maybe on the borderline of it. Like, this resurgence is encouraging for sure, but 2 of those 4 games were against the Buccaneers, who have allowed the 4th most receiving yards and 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. Another of those big 4 games for Pitts was against the Panthers, who have allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends. And the 4th game during that 4-game hot streak for Pitts was against the Seahawks, who have allowed the 4th most receiving yards and 9th most fantasy points to tight ends. So he has taken advantage of a soft stretch of scheduling. But it's not all matchup related. I mean, it is nice to see Pitts tapping into his talents, because this dude is big and fast and freakishly athletic. And like, he is certainly capable of being a tier 1 tight end. Let's just see it sustained maybe when the matchups aren't quite as favorable.
How would you rate the matchup this week?
enough that I'm checking to see where I have where I have Pitts in my rankings. I've got him at 7th against Dallas. I know. What would you say, Debro? Kind of a neutral matchup, the Cowboys against
I actually quietly love this matchup for Kyle Pitts. I don't think Dallas has either faced a lot of good tight ends or a lot of good tight ends that have been utilized. Like you could say, okay, well, they've played the Ravens, they've played the Browns, but then it was Watson. It was the Ravens not really utilizing a lot of guys. This is quietly, I think, a smash spot for Kyle Pitts. And the reason Dallas, again, I talked about they haven't seen a lot of offenses that have featured. George Kittle absolutely destroyed them, and I was high on him walking into that matchup because Dallas has quietly given up the highest yards per reception to tight ends and the third most receiving touchdowns. So I'm with you. We're not far apart. Like Kyle Pitts, I've got him at tight end 6 for the week. But that's only because I love Evan Ingram a little bit more and I like Cade Otton a little bit more. So I can only push him up so high into the rankings, but I still love Kyle Pitts. I'll start him over David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, Laporta, Andrews, a bunch of different guys that I think people would like this week too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, Ingram and Otton are sort of forced to be these target hogs in their offense because of the situation with the wide receivers on those teams. Whereas there's always the chance that Pitts might get lost in the target shuffle a little bit behind London and Mooney.
Debro, where would you rank Pitts in terms of rest of season? How many tight ends would you rather have from this point forward than Pitts?
Oh, that's a good call. I mean, really, I think it's a short list. It's Trey McBride, George Kittle, Brock Bowers, and I think the conversation starts at tight end 4 with Travis Kelce. You could put Evan Ingram probably into that conversation too, but we've seen a lot more bad than we've seen good out of Trevor Lawrence this year. So I still think that we haven't seen the best iteration of the Falcons offense, boys. I still think that this offense is kind of finding its way. We've seen 2 to 3 games really good of Bijan coming on. Same thing with Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I think there are still better days ahead for this Atlanta Falcons offense. So I think the conversation begins at tight end 4. I've got him at tight end 5 rest of the season.
Does that mean they're going to insert Penix at quarterback, the best iteration of this offense?
Kirk is so good, man.
I guess Fitz, we've officially hit your deadline for that to happen, right?
I know the bold prediction of Cousins getting benched on the merits for Penix didn't happen, but hey, still might happen before the season is out. We'll
Maybe.
see. They can't play the Buccaneers every week, man. Their regular season matchups against the Bucs are over now.
If they could, that would be so glorious. If they could.
Let's go to Broncos Ravens. This game's in Baltimore. Bo Nix has been a top 10 fantasy quarterback in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He now gets a Baltimore defense that has been thrown on all season and is also just pretty banged up in general. The Ravens are good typically against mobile quarterbacks, which is not surprising because they see one every day in practice. But this is not the typical Ravens defense. At least it certainly hasn't been the first 2 months. Do we trust Bo Nix to continue his hot streak? Or are we worried about the rookie QB in Baltimore, a place where rookie QBs typically struggle? Debro, what do you think?
Typically used to struggle. I mean, I don't think this pass defense can freaking stop anybody nowadays. I've got him flirting. I think Bo Nix, I think you can start the conversation for him as low-end quarterback 1. Somewhere around QB 7, QB 8. Right now, currently, I've got him at QB 13. He's in a long mix of guys like the Staffords, Sam Darnolds, Dak Prescott, Pat Mahomes of the week. If somebody wanted to have him as a low-end QB1, I totally understand it because, I mean, Worm, you might want to cover your ears. I'm not worried about the Baltimore defense at all. They have to show the ability to stop anybody through the air. And this is not even just, they've been hurt. Dude, they were at full strength and they still sucked. It didn't freaking matter. So Bo Nix, I do think that he's probably going to end up as a QB1 this week, so I want to stay probably above consensus considering where ECR comes in. But, I mean, you're telling me the pass defense that's given up the most passing touchdowns in the NFL, the most passing yards per game? Hell no, I'm not scared of them.
So before I toss to Fitz, I have one follow-up for you, Debro, because this is something I brought up on an earlier show this week too. The rate prior to the injuries, when healthy, the Ravens defense where they really struggled was against teams that had an alpha receiver. Jamar Chase did really well against him. Rashee Rice in that first game of the season. CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams in that Raiders loss. It was always the teams that had that really, really high level number 1 The Broncos don't really have that. I mean, your mileage may vary on some of these guys, but none of them are clearly in that tier 1 tier. I mean, even in that Bucs game, that Bucs offense looked a lot different as soon as Mike Evans went out. So now that they're getting healthy, Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphrey are practicing again this week and trending towards playing, it seems like if they're healthy, then this is the type of passing attack that doesn't have that alpha that has really hurt them so much this year. Does that weigh into it at all? Or do you just think like any style of I guess what I'm asking is because that Bills game is kind of the prime example of a team that didn't take advantage of the defense. And that was pre-Amari Cooper trade. They didn't have that alpha guy and it really worked to the Ravens' benefit. Do you think that this could be another scenario like that as they get healthy? Or do you think they're just kind of in shambles and it's going to be strong passing regardless?
I'm going to throw this back at you, Worm. Who do you think is the better NFL wide receiver right now? Cedric Tillman or Courtland Sutton? Is he a true alpha? Because he absolutely just wrecked them last week.
Well, but that was the one game. That was a game where they were beat up. That was where they didn't have Marlon Humphrey.
But are they fully healthy walking into this game?
They're healthier. They're not. They're certainly not fully healthy. It's a good point. I do really like Cedric
really
Tillman,
like. I'm needling you a little bit here.
No, that's a good point.
I think in its entirety, this secondary, whether healthy or not, I think has been downgraded to a point where I don't think you have to be that true type of alpha. Like I think there's a conversation, especially in skill sets and archetypes between Cedric Tillman and Courtland Sutton. So I think Courtland Sutton is good enough to take advantage of this matchup and lead the way. And would we have said this maybe before last week? Maybe not, but he's been getting a ton of volume. And he took advantage of the Carolina Panthers last week. So I think he could do it against the Ravens too.
Ravens just also can't get pressure on anybody, which is not going to help against any offense. Yeah. And by the way, this isn't even me being defensive about the Ravens. This is me deciding if I need to start Courtland Sutton in a few weeks this week. So
start him, fire him up.
The follow-up, yeah. Fitz, what do you think about this? You know, we talked a bit about Bo Nix again yesterday. But again, top 10 fantasy quarterback in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He's been on a real heater.
QB2 last week.
Whew. And we sort of joked about, the historically not a good matchup for rookie quarterbacks going into Baltimore, but this Ravens defense does not have Terrell Suggs or Ed Reed roaming around anymore. So, but I still kind of agree with your premise here, Worm, that maybe this isn't quite the matchup it looks to be on paper. And a lot of the reason why Bo Nix has been an effective fantasy quarterback has been the value he has added as a runner. Like he is put up really impressive rushing numbers, like more impressive than some of the guys we were expecting big rushing totals from. So can he just come in and pick apart the Ravens pass defense, especially if they do have, I don't know what the status of Marlon Humphrey and Nate Wiggins is. Are those guys going to play this week, Worm?
They've been limited in practice, so it's unclear.
So I still feel like it's a capable secondary if those guys are healthy. So, yeah, I do kind of have a hard time believing that Bo Nix, a rookie who has not really been dicing up people with his arm, is going to come into Baltimore, which has traditionally been a really tough place to play during the John Harbaugh era, and just tear it up. So I am conservative with my ranking of Bo Nix this week. I've got him QB 16.
Just quickly, I want to throw a second question out for this matchup because we talked about it on the day it happened, but we haven't really talked about it on the shows, at least the ones I've been on, in the days since. So now that we have had some time to kind of process this trade, what are we doing with the Baltimore pass catchers this first week with Diontae Johnson in town? Fitz?
For this game, I'm starting Zay Flowers and maybe Mark Andrews, depending on my tight end situation, and sitting everyone else.
Debra?
I'm honestly worried about everybody in this matchup. Dude, somebody's catching a Patrick Surtain shadow. It's going to happen. The question is, who are you betting on? I don't think it's going to be Rashad Bateman. I don't think it's going to be a Diontae Johnson, which I'll throw this out here. Unless you are pressed, I would not be starting Diontae Johnson this week. This is just going back to what have we seen out of these guys getting traded in short windows? Amari Cooper, DeAndre Hopkins, they're not going to play. He's not going to play a full-time snap role. That's not going to happen. So really, you're just hoping and praying he catches a touchdown, because outside of that, he probably has a down game. We've seen it off of every single wide receiver, even freaking Devontae Adams traded, and he had rapport with the quarterback going in. So it's just not enough time to digest the playbook, nor to really integrate yourself fully in the offense. So I'm down on Rashad Bateman because, and Worm, you know this as well as I do, Baltimore loves their 12 and 13 personnel. How much do we see that? Like, do we see more 11 personnel? I think probably down the stretch, but I don't think that's going to be automatic in the first game for Diontae Johnson. So in that idea, okay, well, if they're playing multiple tight ends, probably still, then they're going to have to get Diontae Johnson's going to factor into this passing attack. He's probably not taking snaps away from Zay Flowers. It's probably Rashad Bateman. If they're in 2 wide receiver sets, it's going to take the snap hit. So Bateman could see his snaps lowered. Deontay's not going to be a full-time guy. Somebody's going to catch a Patrick Surtain shadow. That's probably going to be Zay Flowers. If I'm Denver, I say, you've got a part-time guy that you just traded for, not so much worried about him. You know, another guy that's just a deep ball specialist in Rashad Bateman, not that worried about him. Okay, let's just wipe Zay Flowers off the map with Patrick Surtain, and you try to beat us. Go ahead. That's, if I'm the Denver Broncos DC, that's the way that I'm looking at it. And so I'm worried, honestly, about all these different pass catchers.
The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it was a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb, we don't care how they score touchdowns. We just want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. There are lots of interesting matchups in Week 9. The clear best game on the slate is Detroit-Green Bay. Huge NFC North implications in this one. Fitz, do you think Jordan Love's going to end up playing?
T-Bro and I were talking about this pre-show. It seems like things are trending that way, and I'm kind of surprised because the Packers have been a pretty cautious organization about bringing back injured players. They have the Week 10 bye, so they could effectively give Jordan Love 3 weeks of rest. But then again, they're playing the Lions at home. So if they have designs on winning the division, they really do need to win this game.
Yeah. Last I looked, the Lions were laying 3.5 in this one. Looks like that is actually down to 2.5. So those are continuing to change in that one. Largely, I would guess, as a result of developing news on Jordan Love. Total in that game 48.5. As I mentioned, those lines and odds are subject to change, of course. Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's go to Dolphins-Bills. The Dolphins offense scored 27 points in Week 8, looking a lot more normal with Tua Tagovailoa back at quarterback. The unit struggled mightily in the first matchup with the Bills, though, even before Tua left that game with a concussion back in Week 2. So what do we expect from Miami's skill players this week, Fitz?
Well, one guy who didn't struggle mightily in that first matchup with the Bills was Devon Achane, who had 22 carries for 96 yards and 7 catches for 69 yards and a touchdown. So I would expect to see Achane heavily involved as a pass catcher once again, because the Bills have allowed an NFL high 434 receiving yards to running backs. And the Bills' run defense, not that great. So Achane's going to be heavily involved, and maybe Raheem Mostert gets in on things. But otherwise, I don't know. Like, Tyreek Hill has not had a great deal of success against the Bills in recent years. Jalen Waddle had a pair of 100-yard games against the Bills in 2022, but hasn't done much since. Just seems like Sean McDermott and his staff kind of have a handle on the Miami passing game and how to keep it under control. So I'm excited about Achane. Tempered enthusiasm for other components of the Miami offense.
Debra, how are you approaching the Dolphins in this one?
I'm currently on Betting Pros right now, betting the over at plus money on Devon Achane's receptions at 4.5. That's how I'm attacking this game. I think it's Achane time, dude. And honestly, I don't want to start Jalen Waddle. If anybody tuned into the live stream yesterday on Halloween, basically every question we fielded was, hey, do I play Jalen Waddle? And I'm like, no. Like, you got to get volume to score fantasy points, even in tough matchups. Jalen Waddle's not getting it. Like, this is very much exactly what we saw last year. It's the Tyreek Hill show. Get him a 30% target share. And Jalen Waddle, if you get targets, cool. If you don't, cool. So lately with Tua, the wide receiver 2 in this offense has been Devon Achane. So I'm going to also be below consensus on Tyreek Hill. Like Tua has been crushed in these matchups by the Buffalo Bills, and Tyreek Hill is going to get his targets and stuff. This is a top 3 pass defense in the NFL. Like Tyreek Hill, I've got at wide receiver 8. I can make you a really good case. Like straight up, I want to play Chris Olave over Tyreek Hill this week. I would want to play, assuming like Puka's banged up and stuff, and we get to that game later, but Cooper Kupp, probably playing him over Tyreek Hill. Like I just think this is a game where we could see the Dolphins have struggled religiously against the Bills, and I don't see what's going to change in this matchup. So I'm going to nerf Tyreek Hill. I'm going to have Jalen Waddle in the wide receiver 3 or 4 territory, and definitely do not start him this week and fire up Achane. I think he crushes.
This is a total non sequitur. I meant to bring this up at the top of the show and just forgot. And since we're talking about the AFC East in this matchup, I'll use that as the slight, excuse for transitioning into it. Where does that Garrett Wilson catch rank amongst the all-time catches you guys saw from last night's game? That was, I think it was better than the Odell catch. Like,
you think it was better?
I think it was better. Odell had his feet like kind of together. This dude was like going full Michael Jordan, like doing the splits in midair, falling backwards. I thought it was more impressive. I mean, obviously the Odell one was impressive too, but I thought this catch was it just looked sick. It was one of the coolest catches I've ever seen.
I think it's just recency.
We're not docking him for maybe not being technically inbounds on that. Like I thought that was a dubious inbounds call, to be quite honest.
Rule of cool.
That was a vibes call. The refs were like, we can't call this not a touchdown. We're gonna get booed. We're gonna get security to help us escort us out if we don't call this a touchdown.
Yeah. Garrett Wilson, he was making one-handed catches right and left last night. That was fun to watch. All right, yeah, like I said, I didn't really have a good transition to that, but
I mean, it's a top 10 all-time catch, no doubt. I think it's top 10.
And again, it like not only was it just an impressive catch, it just looked like it looked.
I still haven't seen. You know, the one thing I've looked for, guys. Nobody has made the Garrett Wilson Air Jordan like picture or meme yet. Like I haven't seen that yet. I've seen the side by sides with Odell. I haven't seen the negative space picture yet. So I'm waiting on that.
I saw a lot of it with like them side by side, like people posting the two images together. But I didn't see a lot of the like actual edited together.
I haven't seen the Air Garrett yet. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah.
Air Wilson. Which one sticks?
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next game here. Saints-Panthers with Diontae Johnson, who we already talked about, now in Baltimore. Who is the Carolina receiver to play in fantasy? Xavier Legette, who I think had kind of popped up on the injury report a bit. Jalen Coker, who I know Debro has been a big fan of for a while. Or, door number 3. Debro, we'll start with you.
Well, I know all the entire fantasy industry is in on him right now, but if you've been in these streets, you've been on this podcast feed, and you've been listening to shows since before the NFL draft, you already knew about Jalen Coker. You already had him stashed in all your Dynasty Taxi squads because I was talking about him before the freaking NFL draft and how it was a shame. It was a travesty that he went undrafted. Kid can play. I think if you're going to make a bet on anybody leading them in receiving yards this week, I'm going to put my bet on Jalen Coker, and this is no shade against Legette. Legette's been good. He hasn't been great. And the matchup, this all goes back to, and yes, the entire Saints secondary is banged up. I'm not going to say that they're not. Jalen Coker has been freaking fantastic on a per route basis, and the Saints are giving up the 8th most fantasy points per game to opposing slot wide receivers and the 3rd most receiving yards. It's Jalen Coker week, people. Enjoy.
Where are you ranking him? Like, are you actively starting him?
I'm actively starting him in a few different leagues, as a flex. And I'm going to have him, like right now, I've got him at Jalen Coker. Where are you at? I've got him right now at wide receiver 42. I think that he is in the same conversation as Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Tolbert. And that's only 2 spots ahead. 3 spots ahead of Xavier Legette.
Okay. Fitz, what do you think? Do you also endorse Jalen Coker as the guy in this, receiving game, or is it Legette, or is it somebody else?
It's no one with Bryce Young at quarterback for the Panthers. I'm not starting any of these guys. The rest of the season is simply a dynasty scouting mission to assess Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, and Jatavian Sanders. I am not letting Debro talk me into starting Jalen Coker over Jalen Waddle. That's not going to happen.
One gets targets, Fitz. The other one won't.
Yeah, targets from Bryce Young, dude. Targets from Bryce Young.
I mean, yeah, but aren't those targets from Bryce Young are the same thing as no targets from Tua, right? Or maybe better for Bryce? I don't know.
Well, so how about sticking with his offense then with Bryce Young starting? If Jonathan Brooks is active, Fitz, are you starting him or do you want to see how he looks in his first game?
No, he is fantasy pyrite. Like he has been the biggest fool's gold of the 2024 fantasy season. Like everyone thinks he's going to come in and be this workhorse savior right away. First of all, no incentive for the Panthers to use him heavily. He is coming off a torn ACL. The team does not have playoff aspirations, and Chuba Hubbard is running really well. I would expect them to work in Jonathan Brooks very sparingly. It's a redshirt season for all these guys, Worm. It's like your hotshot University of Maryland basketball recruits. Put them on the bench for a year, let them learn, bring them in as redshirt freshmen. A year from now, it might look better for the Panthers. They might have a new quarterback, but this year, wash out. Do not start any Panthers other than perhaps Chuba.
Braden Pierce, redshirt freshman this year from Maryland. He sat all last year. 7-footer, can hit the three. I'm hoping he's the next.
What have you done, Fitz?
I'm hoping he's the next successful Big Ten redshirt freshman since Ethan Happ. That's what I'm.
Here we go. Good Lord, what have we done?
I know 0 people listening care about that.
What have we done to the show?
D-Bro, you were really high on Jonathan Brooks in dynasty drafts. Are you starting him this week if he's active?
No, I'm not starting him. I think he plays a handful of snaps. I think if he can get up to full, I think Carolina is being extremely conservative with him because they look at him as one of the cornerstones, the few cornerstones that they do have, if any, right now outside of Jonathan Brooks. I think he's a cornerstone of this franchise moving forward. So they are extremely being patient and treating him with kid gloves. I think that he only plays a handful of snaps. Could his workload go up down the season to get a look at the young kid? That all depends on how comfortable he is and where his health is at. I don't think that they're going to just keep shoving him into the closet. If he is ready to go by season's end, he could see a cup of coffee as the lead guy later in the season. Do I project that this week? No, not at all.
Let's go to Bears at Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 111 receiving yards and a touchdown in week 8. It was just his second game inside the top 20 receivers in fantasy this season. So are we back to ranking him highly, or even in a tough matchup in Chicago, or are we saying that we kind of need to see it some more still before we start moving him back up the rankings to kind of where he was during draft season, D-Bro?
I've got him at wide receiver 16 right now. You'd have to tell me versus ECR. Is that high? Am I equal with ECR? Where am I at, Worm? Because
double check.
I feel like I'm probably above ECR with that. And really,
ECR is wide receiver 17 in half people.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm going to be in line with consensus. I can't see myself pushing him up much higher considering all the players that I have above him. And I think that's right. Is it a tough matchup? Yes. And if people have been reading the primer, you thought the ability for Marvin Harrison Jr. to have a big game last week was there because this all goes back to the coverage data, people. Versus too high, he has not been good, and this is part of the role and part of how they're using him. But versus single high, he's still been awesome. Single high matchups, that is the Marvin Harrison Jr., the usage that we thought we were getting in every single week. So going back to this, the Bears run single high at the 5th highest rate, almost 60% of the defensive snaps. Against single high, Marvin Harrison Jr. has a 25.5% target share, almost 3 yards per route run, and almost a 29% first read share. So is this a tough matchup? Yes. Is Marvin Harrison Jr. still possibly going to pop off for a big game? Yes, as well.
Fitz?
He maybe popped off and the coverage scheme helped him do that last week, but it hasn't been volume based. It was efficiency based. He hasn't seen more than 7 targets in any of his last 5 games. So I've got him wide receiver 19, and that almost feels generous based on the usage lately. I want to see him more involved. I want to see double digit target games, and we just haven't been getting them.
Yeah, I mean, only 2 games inside the top 20 receivers this season, and one of them he got all of his production in 1 quarter.
First quarter, yeah.
So it's been 5 quarters of total, productive, performance from him. So yeah, it's weird because it really took me a while to start saying, okay, maybe he shouldn't be ranked in that top 12, 15 range, and I came around on that, and then you see this kind of bounce back game, and it's it's always a question, for a ton of players every year, like how quickly do you then go back to this is the guy we expected versus this is the guy we've seen, and maybe this is kind of the outlier performance. So I'll be really curious to see how he does again in this matchup with the Bears.
Just a note on the Rams, 8th highest single high rate, and now he gets a team that's top 5.
So it's a good note. Speaking of the Rams, Rams at Seahawks is our next game. Now, originally when I put this together, Puka Nacua had not left practice with the knee issue. So the original question was phrased as, now that both are back and healthy, do Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp both belong in the top 10 of fantasy wide receivers? Puka, for those who missed it, I can't imagine many people did miss it, left practice with a knee issue. They described it, like from the beat reporting and from the team, as very minor. We're currently in our Are They Playing tool, giving Puka a 71% chance to play. That's based on 1 healthy practice, 1 limited, and some of the reporting. But you guys kind of feel differently, it sounds like, from what we were talking about before the show. So I guess let's, instead of treating these guys as healthy, let's just turn this into a conversation about this receiving game for this week. Puka Nacua, with him limited or even possibly missing this game, how are you treating Cooper Kupp, D-Bro?
I've got Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 10. Unless Puka misses it, I'm probably not bumping him much higher than that. Well, no, I take that back. I mean, I think if Puka's out or we get more pessimistic news today or through the weekend, then Cooper Kupp probably goes up to wide receiver 7 for me. I just dropped Puka to wide receiver 15. I'm more concerned, man. Like this. What kind of injury reporting have we seen out of this team? Oh, we don't know if Puka's going to play a full-time role. Okay, that happens. Oh, we get no news about Jordan Whittington being hurt and not playing at all because people were starting him, and then he plays nothing in one of the games. Count me as a little bit
division,
scared.
Man. The 49ers with the McCaffrey stuff early in the year, the Rams lately, the Seahawks never have their injury reports out on time. This whole division is just like playing fast and loose with the injury reporting.
It's absolutely frustrating, man. So I mean, if we getting news right now definitively that he is 100% not going to be 100%, that's a fact. He's not going to be 100% going into this game. People need to kind of treat this with kid gloves right now. And some of that's bumping up Cooper Kupp at the ranks, and some of that's dropping Puka Nacua. And depending on what other options, like if you're in an 8 or a 10-team league and you've got other like studly options, you might even consider sitting Puka Nacua. Depending on your options, like if you got other really freaking good wide receivers, like a Marvin Harrison Jr., playing him over Puka maybe this week. Like, didn't think I was going to be there. I mean, I had Puka as my wide receiver 5 before this news came out. So I love him in this matchup, but crap, man, like what? How good is his health and how much does he play? And just a note, supposedly, unless I read the reports wrong, this is the same knee that he missed time because of. It's not even like, oh, it's a different leg. So, yeah, I'm super concerned.
Fitz, how are you approaching this game given the question marks? And also, do you think Puka's going to play or not?
I think as we record this on Friday morning, that the Friday practice report will tell the tale. I think if Puka practices Friday, he plays. If he doesn't, he's not going to play. I kind of feel how that's going to be. And regardless of the size of my league, I'd play Puka if he does practice on Friday and is, cleared to go for Sunday. Yeah, I mean, I would be a little worried about it. Like, you have to fear that this is starting to become maybe a chronic issue for Puka. And it's sad because, how enthusiastic were the Puka investors when he came back and had the game he had against the Vikings? And I don't know about you guys, but I watched that game and I thought I have to rank him ahead of Cooper Kupp every week. Like, he just looks so dominant right now. Like, I have to rank him ahead of Kupp, even though I still kind of like Kupp if he's healthy. So, but I do think, Kupp obviously a play either way, and his target outlook greatly enhanced if Puka sits. But I would still play Puka if he does indeed suit up for this game. But yeah, this is concerning long term, especially for the Puka dynasty investors, because he had injury problems in college. Now they're rolling over to the NFL, and it's a shame because when this guy is right physically, he is a top 10, borderline top 5 receiver.
Pat, are you bumping Kupp up in the ranks with the Puka news at all?
I mean, I'll probably have him like where you have him, what, wide receiver 7 or wide receiver 8.
I've got him at wide receiver 9 right now, but I'm kind of like, I'm making the conversation inside my head right now to bump him to wide receiver 7.
So I had 2 kind of follow-up questions. One, just quickly, where are you guys ranking Stafford with this news?
Oh, that's the hard one, man. I had him.
It bumps him down.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Of course, I bet an over on Stafford passing yardage right before we got the Puka news. Right now I've got Stafford QB 11, and if Puka doesn't play, I'll probably have him down at like 14 or 15.
D-Bird, yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
I mean, I've got him at QB 8. I'm dropping him right now to probably the QB 10 right now. I do think the other fallout of this that we haven't talked about, I already had him at this ranking, but Kyren Williams should be ranked RB1 overall this week. Like, he is going to get used a ton. This is a top 3, top 5 matchup. Like, I think the biggest fallout for people is like, I think Kyren is going to smash in this game. Like, he was already set for a really good game. Now you're telling me Puka might be limited, maybe out. It's not just the Kupp stuff. Like, I think Kyren is going to crush.
The last thing I was going to ask, D-Bro, before we move off this game, do you recall, was it knee injuries? I know Puka had a lot of injury stuff in college. It's one of the reasons he fell. Was it his knee or was it other?
It was a lot of soft tissue stuff. I think he did have some knee stuff in there, but it was a lot of different soft tissue stuff. Like, it sucks, man. Like, he's so freaking talented, man. Like, that's just where I'm like, come on, NFL, can we just turn off injuries? Like, has anybody, and I meant to tweet this out the other day, have y'all also ever pulled up your leagues like in the last like 2 to 3 weeks and just gone to waivers and almost wanted to shed a tear seeing Brandon Ayuk, Chris Godwin, all these different guys on waivers? Yeah. Like, I'm scrolling through names and I'm like, no.
I know.
Yeah, some platforms.
It's like watching the Oscars and getting the montage of deceased movie stars at the end. Like, I feel I'm getting emotional about it.
It's rough, man.
By the way, D-Bro, the bold prediction that Kyren is going to smash this week. That's like predicting.
I know.
Star Wars movie is going to gross a lot of money or something.
I know. I'm out here just tossing that clickbait. Kyren's going to just run over Seattle. Earth-shattering takes. I know.
Clickbait corner from D-Bro is that Kyren should be ranked highly. Let's go to Lions at Packers. So just quickly on Jordan Love, Are They Playing tool with FantasyPros.com, which are our new tool this year. AI-powered kind of predictive tool about whether guys are going to play or not. It does give Jordan Love an 87% chance to play. That's based on some of the practice reporting. The fact that he went from a did not practice to a limited practice on Thursday. Continue to keep an eye on that. It is not a sure thing that he's going to play, but our tool does like the possibility that he does. So the way I kind of phrased this question was if he does play versus if he doesn't. If Jordan Love does play, is there anybody in this matchup that we don't love? I mean, even Sam Laporta, who's been a disappointment this season, is coming off his best week of the year. And then on the flip side, if Love doesn't end up playing, how far do the Packers players drop in your rankings? Fitz, I'll start with you.
So if Love is playing, like Watson and Wicks are the guys who are your maybe tough choices. Probably for most people, like on the outside looking in, but I think Watson would probably be a little more playable than Wicks, at least based on the usage trends for the Packers. But obviously both really sort of risk reward, not safety options. So whereas conversely, if Jordan Love is out, I think Josh Jacobs and Jaden Reed are really the only guys you want to play in this offense, like not even Tucker Kraft. Because in Malik Willis's previous 2 starts, he had fewer than 20 passing attempts both times. So for the Lions, obviously Gibbs and Montgomery and St. Brown are in your lineup, but Laporta and Goff are totally dependent on what your roster looks like, because those guys are borderline like back end QB1, back end tight end 1 types, and maybe you have a better option.
You don't think we would see if Love is out another like 30 carry game from Josh Jacobs though, right? Because the Lions are too good to do that again.
It seems like
you could do that against them.
Well, they have a good run defense or have had. Maybe it hasn't been as lights out as it was.
But they're also just going to score so much. Like, you can't keep up with them, it feels like that way.
So I do feel like Matt LaFleur is somewhat cognizant of not trying to run Josh Jacobs into the ground. Like the first time when Love sustained the injury in Brazil, the next week against the Titans, like we saw some ridiculous number of carries from Jacobs, like 28 or whatever. And I was kind of expecting.
I think it was over 30. I think it was like
maybe
30.
It was 30.
Yeah.
And in week 3, I was kind of expecting the same thing, and he had under 20. And they like mixed in more Emmanuel Wilson, I think. And now they've got Chris Brooks, too, who is running well and just a horse. That dude's like 235 pounds. So maybe it's kind of an ensemble effort. But with Jacobs leading the way, I don't think that LaFleur really wants to like consistently be giving Jacobs 25 plus carries.
Debro, how are you looking at this game if Love plays versus if he doesn't?
Well, first of all, I want to attack this not only from the are they playing tool, because I think that is a fantastic tool, especially giving insight to people that, what am I doing? Moves do I need to make considering on if players are playing or not? But I think the line and the betting lines are telling us that Jordan Love plays. If not, the total would be lower. And if not, the line would be different. So I think it's practice reports. I think the other thing, and Fitzy and I were talking about this before we turned the mics on, the fact that the Packers had Jordan Love out there yesterday, what it looked like from every video I saw, that it was raining at practice. So you don't want Jordan Love, if you're that worried about his groin slipping and sliding around on a wet practice field. So as well as it's supposed to rain during this game. So some of this could be, okay, can you prove to us that you can move around in less than ideal conditions? So I do think Jordan Love is going to play. I agree with Fitzy's earlier assessment about this being a divisional game, and the Packers are like, look, we got any shot at the freaking division, we need to win this game. And that is, the only chance they have to do that is with Jordan Love. I don't think they could do that in previous weeks, what they've done with Malik Willis and going run heavy and things like that. And so I do think Love plays. I think this is a huge game for Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs. Detroit has been crushed by the slot. But as far as the guys you don't want to play, and this is assuming Love plays, I'm not playing Christian Watson. He has not been utilized hardly at all versus single high, and I think that's what they're going to see a ton of. Detroit last year, they're already utilizing it on over 60% of their snaps this season, but even last year in the 2 meetings that the Packers had against the Lions, almost 60% of the defensive snaps were single high. Christian Watson versus single high this year, he's got an 18% target per route run rate, 1.4 yards per route run. And Tucker Kraft, if Jordan Love plays, he's a low-end tight end 1. If Jordan Love were to happen to miss this game, I'm with Fitzy. I would sit him. It's also just it's a horrible matchup for him. Detroit has been legit against tight ends, second fewest receiving yards and fantasy points allowed at the position. So I think it's going to be a tough game for him. And I think this is going to be a good game for Sam Laporta. Packers have been bad versus tight ends. So his route share and his targets go up, and another game without Jameson Williams.
Let's go to Colts at Vikings. Before we get to the key question for Sunday night's matchup, I want to ask you guys about your Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. Debro, what must-order food gets you reaching for your Uber Eats app for great game day deals when you think of Minnesota?
I didn't know this was a Minnesota food, but I am so happy to talk about it. I love Swedish meatballs, dude. That is probably in the top 15 of foods for me, just in general. So you're telling me I'm going to a place where it's done well? It's a must-have.
Fitz, how about you?
You didn't know they have a lot of Scandinavian people in Minnesota, Debro? So for me, it's got to be the Juicy Lucy. So this is a famous kind of cheeseburger where they bake the cheese or fry the cheese, I guess, right inside the burger. Just got to be careful if you're getting that fresh off the griddle. That stuff can be like molten lava, and it is very easy to burn the inside of your mouth.
So like a hamburger hot pocket. That sounds glorious.
Yeah. Some of my best friends growing up, their family's from Minnesota, and so every once in a while when I would go over, we would have a Juicy Lucy. Extremely, extremely delicious. So I fully endorse that pick from Fitz. One of my favorite parts about doing this segment each week is learning about what cities have which foods, because a lot of these cities I just haven't been to or don't associate them with this food. I did not know that Minnesota is where pizza rolls were invented, and I love a good pizza roll. And I don't know if they're considered they perfected it or they're the best, but if you look it up, it's where they were invented. Is pizza rolls. So not that they're the healthiest thing. I can't eat them too much, But if they were healthy, I would eat them every day. Pizza rolls are freaking delicious.
Lots of cheese enveloped in other things.
Yes,
That's the thing that I'm getting out of here. Like, did they invent Hot Pockets too? Like,
well, and the nice thing too is everything we just listed, Swedish meatballs and Juicy Lucy's and pizza rolls, they're all great for watching football. Those are all great football snacking foods. Yep. So I would be super on board with the whole meal of just those three all put together. Honestly, it sounds pretty delicious. There you have it, our Uber Eats Sunday night meals of the week. Again, we got the Juicy Lucy for Fitz. We got Swedish meatballs for Debra. We got pizza rolls for myself. Uber Eats has the best game day deals all season long. Order now for game day. The other one I was considering I didn't pick was Bunt Cake, which is delicious.
Bunt Cakes. I looked at it too.
Yeah.
I looked at it too, man. We have a nothing Bunt Cake place near my house. I can't say that I don't, gain 5 to 10 pounds during the NFL season because of it.
I believe it. I would do the same. All right, let's get into this game. Joe Flacco is starting against the Vikings this week. How do we like Flacco and the Colts pass catchers going up against this ferocious Vikings pass rush, D-Bro?
I think Flacco is going to throw the ball a lot in this game. So I think for the volume, fire him up as a QB2 in Superflex leagues. As far as his efficiency and stuff, I'm very worried about it. We know that Flores is going to blitz the ever-living crap out of him. They lead the NFL in blitz rate amongst 36 qualifying quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, 29th in passing grade, 35th, almost dead last in yards per attempt versus the blitz. So that's not good. Michael Pittman, I am going to definitely have him low this week. I think this is a Josh Downs week. And I know, again, earth-shattering takes. I know Josh Downs has been really good. I know, crazy. But Minnesota has struggled against slot wide receivers. They're allowing the third most fantasy points per game, sixth most receiving yards per game to opposing slot wide receivers. So I think it's probably more of a down game for Pittman, but fire up Josh Downs, man. I'm going to have him comfortably as a top 24 guy this week.
I know you were being sarcastic about, earth-shattering take. Fitz actually does not agree with you based on our conversation yesterday.
Yeah, Downs, okay. Inside the top 20 at wide receiver in ECR, and I'm not there on Josh Downs. Like, everyone seems to ready to anoint him as a superstar. And we kind of got the same treatment with like Wan'Dale Robinson earlier this season, and I was a little skeptical about that. But and I do like Josh Downs. I have him on some dynasty teams. I'm like exciting. He's getting used more, smooth mover, sure-handed, some real elusiveness, but like, I'm just not ready to grant superstar status to a guy who just had his second 100-yard game of his career last week and who has 5 touchdowns in 23 career games. Like, so let's see a little more. And like you, D-Bro, I hate this matchup for the Colts passing game.
Rough.
US Bank Stadium is a tough place to play, man. And Brian Flores, like, the Vikings are going to be spitting fire after losing 2 straight. They're going to blitz Flacco like crazy, and he's not the most mobile guy. We know that. The DraftKings odds on an interception for Joe Flacco, minus 145, and I might have put one of my children's college funds on that. The over half an interception on Joe Flacco, minus 145. So yes, I've pretty aggressively bet that one. I think the Vikings are going to smoke the Colts this week. And though I do have Downs ranked inside starter range, like, I'm not wildly excited about him, and I'm not wildly excited about Pittman either. But I'm also not totally sure that Downs is the better play than Pittman. And I know Pittman might not be 100% with this back issue he's been having, but like, on a week-to-week basis, I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to be ranking Downs over Pittman every week. And maybe, as D-Bro has pointed out, this is a matchup that favors the slot receiver. But man, like, people are making kind of a leap of faith with Josh Downs that I'm not ready to make yet. And maybe I'll be, put in my place if he has a 150-yard game with 2 touchdowns this week. But until we get there, I'm not there.
I want to mention one more thing on Josh Downs. Could he have been the guy we didn't talk enough about the entire offseason? Because we talk about all the time investing in talented second-year wide receivers that flash in their rookie season. Could he be the guy that we didn't talk enough during the offseason about that correlation with? Right now, full season pace for Josh Downs, 133 targets, 91 receptions, almost 1,000 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. That's the pace he's on right now.
Wide receiver 19 in ECR this week, by the way. Yeah. Just quickly before we get off this game, Debro, do you think Flacco gives him a better chance to win this week? And I think going forward, you can make the argument, certainly, yes, Flacco's played well this year. But in this particular matchup, like I think both quarterbacks would struggle against the Vikings defense, truthfully. But I just so worry about a statue like Joe. And I love Joe Flacco, obviously. But I just, a statue going up against his pass rush terrifies me.
I think both these quarterbacks will struggle in this matchup, whether it's A-Rich or Joe Flacco. I think I've been extremely on the other side as far as a lot of consensus, which I saw a lot of people kind of pandering and reversing those takes the more news we got that came out about the Colts. I think I'm sorry. I don't agree with playing Joe Flacco. I don't care if you make the wild card. I think that, like, I understand the locker room and all this kind of stuff. How much are they worried about the locker room for everybody that's caping up for all the locker room narratives? Yeah, because the coach cares a lot about the locker room that he didn't even talk to or didn't even discuss anything with his players. They found out through social media that their quarterback was getting benched. So, yeah, your locker room. But anyway, I don't agree with them benching Anthony Richardson for the outlook of this franchise. But I agree that I think both quarterbacks would struggle here. So
let's go to the last game of the week. Buccaneers at Chiefs. Fitz, Cade Otton is tight end 6 in ECR half PPR rankings this week. Is that too high, too low, or just right? Coming off of 2 weeks where he combined for 20 targets, 17 catches, 181 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, just right. I have him at TE6 behind Travis Kelce, Brock Bowers, David Njoku, Trey McBride, and Evan Engram.
Debra?
I've got him at tight end 5 behind Kelce, Bowers, McBride, and Ingram. Dude, Cade Otton's been so freaking good. And I think, again, we talked about last week, he should be a high-end flex. Like, you should be playing him as basically a wide receiver 3 in your lineups. Like, Cade Otton last week, 20% target share, 30% first read share. That's alpha level first read target share. Like, plus you marry that with the matchup. Kansas City is one of the best matchups on the board for tight ends. Second most receiving yards, third most fantasy points per game. The last little nugget, and this is eye popping. Like, I'm going to tweet this out. Since week 4, Cade Otton has averaged 15 fantasy points per game. And to put that in perspective for people, the entirety of the season, that's equal with Brock Bowers. That is equal with Terry McLaurin for the entire season.
Well, you guys kind of answered it by telling me who was ranked ahead of him, but I was going to ask, like, Cade Otton versus Kyle Pitts, because it's 2 tight ends that we like. It sounds like you both have Otton ahead.
Yeah. But I would be flexing Pitts this week. I think
how
both
about rest of season?
Games.
Would you rather have Pitts ahead of Otton rest of the season?
I'd rather have Pitts because Mike Evans comes back at some point.
Yeah. I'd rather have Pitts too. Just again, this goes back to not just a volume but a talent perspective. I think raw talent. I don't think anybody's going to make the case for Cade Otton over Kyle Pitts and raw talent.
Volume, you would think Otton will still be ahead because he'll be the number 2 target even once Mike Evans comes back because Godwin's not coming back, and Pitts is still going to be somewhere like 2, 3, 4. I mean, depending on the game. So, but yeah, obviously talent is in Pitts' favor.
He's sort of Tampa's answer to Jake Ferguson, a guy who's not like wildly athletic or talented, but just he has this elevated role. He's a very capable pass catcher playing in an offense that really needs him to step up and play a big role.
That's a damn good call. 2024 Cade Otton is 2023 Jake Ferguson. Mount that in the hang that in the Louvre, Fitzy. That's a wonderful call.
By the way, in our dynasty league, the 3 of us are in. I have Bowers, Pitts, and Cade Otton. So if one of you guys wants to come make a trade for a tight end, please.
Sure, I'll trade Trey Benson for Kyle Pitts. Let's do it. I'm still waiting on the offer, Worm. Keep talking about it.
We'll wrap up there. Best of luck in your Week 9 matchups, everybody. I hope everybody had a good Halloween and is excited for this. November, December, that's real football. So excited to get to this time of year and getting closer and closer to the fantasy playoffs. For Fitz and Debro, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.